Welcome to Teaching Truth. Indecent proposal. That's the theme, the appropriate theme for our reflections this week as we dig into the narrative of Genesis 39 and look at the indecent proposal which Potiphar's wife made towards Joseph. In our reflections this week so far, we've been thinking about the testimony which Joseph exhibited. And yesterday in our reflections, we thought about the temptation which Joseph endured, how that was subtle, how it was shocking, how it was sustained, and how also it was strategic. And today we want to think about the tenacity which Joseph displayed. The tenacity which Joseph displayed. When Potiphar's wife propositioned Joseph and grabbed him and said, "Come to bed with me," Joseph made a decision in that moment. And that decision was to say no. No. Joseph was ready with a firm no. Verse 8. Now, although the Bible doesn't say it specifically, I'm sure that even before that moment, Joseph had already settled this matter within his heart. He had already made the decision of what to do when temptation came his way. He had already resolved within his mind that he would go with God and flee literally from the sin which was presenting itself through Potiphar's wife. You see, when we allow our minds to be uncontrolled or unprincipled, we run the risk of being unprepared for the attacks, the subtle, the strategic, the shocking, and the sustained attacks of Satan. And sometimes when temptation comes, it's hard to say no and mean it in the heat of the moment. But if the decision has already been made, if you have already resolved in your heart, it's far easier to take that stand. And that's why we have to guard our minds and guard our minds to the degree from the things that would enter it, pollute it, and weaken our ability to mount a strong defense. There is one word that will help you in the matter of temptation. Spurgeon said it like this: learn to say no. The word is no. The tenacity which Joseph displayed, he met it with a firm refusal. But he also met it with a faith-based refusal. You see, firstly, Joseph refused on the grounds that Potiphar had placed Joseph in a position of power. Why? Because he trusted him. And Joseph refused to violate that trust. We must never violate the trust that someone has placed within us. And notwithstanding that, at the very foundation of Joseph's refusal was his walk with and his commitment to God. Put simply, he knew that committing adultery with this woman, yes, it might well bring pleasure and ecstasy in the short term, but in the long term, it would mean violating the trust which Potiphar had placed in him and would cause a breach in his relationship with God. And even if Potiphar never found out, even if it had been kept a secret between Joseph and Potiphar's wife. Joseph knew that God would know. And that was enough for Joseph. For Joseph, that was a price far too high to pay. His integrity before men, his walk with God, and his ability to look in the mirror at himself without guilt were worth much more to Joseph than a few moments of physical pleasure. Let me say it to you as I say it to myself humbly. Before we give in to any temptation which may come our way, before we do that thing which looks so enticing, we should always think about the consequences. We should always think about what will happen to our testimony in the eyes of others. What will happen to our walk with God? For Joseph, the fear of the Lord was a powerful motivator. And for us, the fear of the Lord too should also be a powerful motivator. He met it also with a faithful refusal. You see, every day this woman pestered Joseph, and every day he steadfastly refused her advances. See, Joseph didn't play mind games. Well, if the Lord didn't want me to do this, he'd just take this away from me. No. Joseph faithfully stood for the Lord and against the evil which was being displayed through Potiphar's wife. Temptation is going to come whether we like it or not. And God will not always take it away in that moment. For sure, God will strengthen us and enable us to stand against it. But we're going to have to fight it and learn to take a stand as Joseph did. He came to the place, that is Joseph, where he refused to listen to her words and even refused to be with her. He came to the place where he physically avoided her. And that actually was a great step, a great thing for Joseph to do. Don't flirt with sin. Don't try to prove you can handle it. Run from it, flee from it, get out of that situation. Don't be foolish enough to dilly-dally with it. It was met with a faithful refusal. Finally, it was met with a final refusal. You see, when the big day came and this woman allowed her thoughts to find physical expression, she grabbed Joseph and said, "Come to bed with me, Joseph. Oh, come on, Joseph." It was time to make a decision, and Joseph did. Joseph spun out of that robe, took to his heels and ran out of the house, leaving her holding the garment. Joseph literally ran away from Potiphar's wife to protect his character. And we need to do the same. We need to spin out of that robe. We need to run out of that proverbial house where temptation is. We need to, as it were, get away from that which will allure us. You see, temptation is never from God. James 1:13. Potiphar's wife tried to blame Joseph and Potiphar for her lust. Temptation is always from within. James 1:14. Satan baits the hook of temptation with the very worm that he knows we like. And temptation needs to be handled immediately, and needs to be handled ruthlessly, and needs to be handled confidently. Joseph displayed tenacity. He ran from that temptation. May we display Joseph-like tenacity whenever temptation comes our way. Let's be like Joseph.